Now we've just created this animation using the wiggly selector to animate all of the different properties. We haven't set any keyframes. You may want some further control of your range selectors by keyframing the parameters. So let's take a look at character chaos, the next composition. First, we'll add an animator. So with our layer selected, we'll animate one of the properties. Now if we go down towards the bottom, you'll see that there are two properties which govern the character. One is character offset, and the other is character value. Let's take a look at character value first. If we click on character value, After Effects is going to change all of the characters in our range selector and assign it a specific ASCII value. When you're typing on the keyboard, the computer doesn't know that you're typing a C versus typing a Webding Snowflake or any other font. What it's doing is deliver a number, the ASCII number. By using this parameter, we're changing all of those values inside our typed phrase to a specific character number. Now, depending on what font you have selected, the character is going to show up as something different. So if we change the character value by clicking and scrubbing on the value, we'll change the number that the computer is assigned to the keyboard and change the character that shows up because of it. With a character value of 41, every single thing that I type has now been assigned keystroke computer number 41, which in this font means it's a closed parentheses. If I change it to a different font, let's change from Courier New down to a Webding, that character is something completely different, but the character value is still 41. We'll undo the font change using Command-Z or Control-Z on a PC. Instead of changing all of the values in my range selector, I may only want to offset the values. So we'll delete this animator, then with text selected again, we'll go and change our character offset. Here in character offset, we're also going to change the value of the text presented. But instead of changing all of the characters, we're going to define an offset value for the number that the computer is assigning to that keyboard stroke. Here we have the word chaos. I'm going to change this from chaos to CH123. So all I have to do is double-click here, then select AOS and type 123. Next, down in the timeline, I can change the value of my character offset from 1 to 3. I can see now that instead of CH, After Effects has offset that character value by 3. The keyboard stroke now, instead of being a C, is 3 values later, DEF. So F is returned. The same for H. It's more easily seen with the numbers. If we add our 3-character offset to 1, 2, 3, we can see that After Effects is delivering 4, 5, 6. We'll use Command-Z or Control-Z to undo this back to the phrase chaos with an offset value of 0. I know that I can open up the magnification for my timeline by clicking on the small bar at the top of the timeline or clicking here on the small slider at the bottom of the timeline, but I can also change the magnification by using the minus key or the plus key to zoom in. I'll use the minus key at the top of the keyboard to see the entire timeline. Next, I'm going to animate the range selector so that it includes different parts of my phrase over the course of my animation. Here, under my range selector, I'll open this up to see the start and end value, and they're both set to units of percentage. I'll set a keyframe for the end. Now, rather than having the end occur at the very end of my phrase, I'll have it occur at the beginning. What this means is that the range selector starts at 0% of the phrase, then ends at 0% of the phrase. So anything inside of the range selector is not going to be applied to any of my text. However, if I navigate down to frame 15, then change the end of my range selector to a value of 100, everything inside the phrase is selected, and anything that is applied to this range selector is being applied to the text. I'm going to move the keyframe from 15 frames down to 1 second in 15 frames, allowing the animation of my range selector to occur a little more slowly. Next, I'll click on the word end to select all of the keyframes, then move the pair of them down to start at frame 15. At 2 seconds, or at the time of my second keyframe, I'll set a keyframe for start at 0%. Then at a second and 15 frames later, I'll set a start value of 100%. Now the start of the range selector is at the very end of the phrase, or at 100% of the phrase. And again, nothing is inside the range selector, so nothing is being applied to the source. I'll click on the word start to select all of the keyframes, then click and drag these down another 15 frames. Next, if we go down to where our character offset is and change the value for our offset, we can see all of the characters inside the range selector being offset as the range selector moves over the phrase. The only problem is that the character offset doesn't change. We could create an expression for this, or animate the character offset, or simply add a wiggly selector. By clicking and dragging now, we can see that the wiggly selector is modifying all of those offset values inside the range selector. Because the range selector is animating, those offset values don't occur at the beginning, then they start to appear over the entire phrase, then the start of the range selector reveals the source again. Up at the very top of this text layer, you'll see that we have the ability to animate the source text. Animating the source text isn't the same as changing the offset values for each of the characters. Instead, After Effects is going to allow us to change the text that makes the phrase for our type layer. By setting a keyframe, you'll see that you get a hold keyframe. After Effects can't create a linear interpolation from one set of type to another, but instead just gives you hold keyframes in order to change your type from one frame to another. That's what we'll do. By setting a keyframe here, it sets our first phrase as chaos. We'll page down to the very next frame, then type a new phrase. Here, you may want to see the original type without the animator imposing the different offset. So down in the timeline, all we need to do is turn off the visibility for that animator so we can see the text. Next, we'll double-click on the layer, selecting the entire phrase, then type the word order. Once you're done, use the Enter key on the keyboard, and you'll see that After Effects sets a new keyframe, and by using page up and page down to toggle between the two keyframes, you can see the source text jump from chaos to order. If we turn on the animator, you'll see that the change is going to be obscured by this flickering of the characters as they go through their offset animation. Here at the beginning of our composition, we start with chaos. Then as the range selector takes over, it applies that offset to our character value. Here in the middle, the range selector covers the entire value of the source text, and this is where that source text changes from chaos to order. At the end of our composition, the start value for the range selector moves towards the end of the phrase, again revealing the original source text. This time, because we've changed it, the new source text is shown instead of the previous phrase.